Okay, uh, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to present 10 click not code tricks your users will love. I presented this at a number of Dreaming events this year, including Non-Profit Dreaming, which is the one where the deck is from. Non-Profit Dreaming was back in March time in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a great event, and I've been asked a few times whether people have said they were going to miss out on the session. So I said I'd present it for the user group because it's quite overall admin-y. These were all the sponsors at Non-Profit Dreaming. Quick roundup. I think most of you know me, but just in case, I lead a small Salesforce consultancy called Hazeldean Solutions. I was the MVP class of 2024, so I'm now on my next renewal. Yes, third year. 16 times certified. I lead this community group, and if you want to find out more about me, there is my trailblazer.com URL and also a link tree that takes you to more interesting things to read. So let's crack on. 10 click not code tricks your users will love. So how to design smoother, more intuitive Salesforce experiences through thoughtful configuration. Now, I'm going to use examples from sales, service, and nonprofit, so kind of a real mix of stuff. I will also say a lot of this stuff you're going to know. Some of it is going to be a recap, some of it's going to make you go, oh yeah, I forgot about that piece of functionality. And hopefully you will also learn something new. So we're going to be covering things such as smart page layouts, conditional visibility, compact layouts, including the dynamic highlights panel, some helpful formulas, micro screen flows, dynamic forms, optimized list views, theme and branding, subtle in-page guidance, and SLDS2. So let's start with number one, which is our smarter page layouts. Now, I am going to ask you to be a little bit sort of involved in this conversation. So feel free to, give me a wave or use your emojis and so on. So whose page layouts currently look a little bit like this? Great. Thank you for being honest there, Tamsin. So they're a bit boring, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, this is similar, but I've kind of livened it up just a little bit. I've moved made the details tab the default, because why that wouldn't be to start with, who knows? I also took off the related tab and decided that I would put those related lists into the actual tabs for cases and opportunities. Move the duplicate component. I added the related quick links. I upgraded to dynamic forms, although that is optional. I also aligned fields in each section. And I removed fields I didn't need, and I just generally moved things around and renamed some sections. So already it's starting to look a little bit nicer. So in Lightning App Builder, these are some of the things that you can do to be able to do that. Things like aligning your fields horizontally, because why that wouldn't be a standard, who knows? And as I said, I removed the related list tab as well. So I actually popped the related list for opportunities under my opportunities tab, same for cases. So kind of making it easier for users to find what they need rather than them just being stacked in that big related list tab. Let's move on to item number 2, conditional visibility. So this example is on the Lightning record page. We can make conditionally visible fields, components, sections, tabs. We can base that on things like fields, users, permissions. In this example, I've made the cases tab conditionally visible based on the profile where the name contains service. You could also use a permission set as well. So one way to hide things, make things visible for only the relevant people. And on the home page, you can make components, including things like dashboards, conditional based on what you want to make them conditionally visible on. I quite like doing dashboards based on user fields, putting some little fields on the user record and then allowing them to be true depending, and if works at a smaller organization where maybe, Hannah needs to see dashboards A, B, C, but Tamsin needs to see dashboards A and C. Lorraine needs to see dashboard B only. Kind of doesn't fit maybe with their profile or their permission sets, but it's maybe to do with the different hats they wear in the organization. And that seems to work quite nicely. Not enterprise, agreed, but nice and small, particularly if you've got to have that level of flexibility. Let's move on to item number 3. So this is compact layouts. So here we can control which fields your users see at the highlights panel at the top of the record. And you can also control which fields appear in the expanded lookup card. So when you hover over a link in record details, so for example, hovering over Eric's name here, we can see, what's his account name, email, and so on. Nice way to make that possible, and something I actually kind of, I'm not going to say ignore, but just kind of forgot about and didn't really consider, making those key things available at a glance. And that can be done in Object Manager. You have to select your object, compact layouts and new. Then you have to select the fields you want to display, and then you have to assign it, which I find really strange if it's the only one you've got, but you do. You can actually then assign different ones to different people. And that is how it will look. Now, the other thing is there is also the dynamic highlights panel, which is effectively also a type of, it's not a compact layout, it's different. But if you want your compact layout to just show what's in the hover, you hover over a link, then you've got the dynamic highlights panel where you can add up to 12 fields. You can also make fields conditionally visible. So, for example, in this one, the mobile number only shows when it's not blank. You can also make buttons conditionally visible, and you can actually make the whole panel conditionally visible. So, if you wanted a different panel for, say, different personas in the org, again, that down, let's go back to that sales and service kind of idea, or maybe you've got, I don't know, fundraising versus programs. Maybe they want different fields at the top on those pages. And this is how they compare. Don't put a compact layout and a dynamic highlights panel on the same page. It would look very strange, but that's how they compare. And you can kind of see we've already managed to hide that mobile field. We've managed to add in some extra fields. We're kind of making things just look nicer. And yeah, they're great. And they're very easy to set up as well. Moving on to item 4, let's talk about helpful formulas. So I have a client who absolutely loves a flag. Loves a flag. Let's have our case priorities as a flag. So we do. And actually, out of the box, Salesforce, you can literally go put this in your org right now. Don't do it in production, but you could. And it will just work based off that priority field, because actually those flag green GIF, yellow green, yellow GIF, red GIF actually already exist. And there is actually a document with some of these helpful formulas in it. Right at the end, there is a resource doc that you can grab, and it takes you to a Salesforce document. So they're already there. So, somewhere you can obviously write your own as well, but this one is already there, ready for you. I've also seen really cool emojis. I don't think Emma from Raspberry Pi is here, but at Raspberry Pi, they've got some really cool emojis that they put in as well. Other things that can be helpful, things like maybe taking a field off the user record that goes with the owner. So use cases of things like, well, I need to know there's quite a lot of people in the organization with donations. Do I need to know that it's owned by the music team or the programs team or the grants team or you're not going to remember the name of all these people. So why not just pull that straight from the user record? Then you can also use formulas based on lots of other values. So, if you're trying to do donor segmentation, and it may get too complicated, you can only take this so far, but maybe we've got a donor type. We just want to say anybody who has given over £10,000 in the last year, they're going to be a major donor. If they've given over 5, they're going to be, I don't know, mid-level, but maybe if they have a recurring, they become something else, and you can kind of build that out in a formula. And then that gives you something really nice just to throw onto a report to just make it easier to filter through them rather than every time your reports having to be like, right, what was that parameter? Hang on, how do I pull those together? And you could do that in a formula. Going to move on to item 5. Now, these are micro screen flows. I want to be really clear here. Salesforce did not roll out a piece of new functionality. First time I did the presentation, didn't put the bracket on micro. People thought it was a new thing. It's not. They're just screen flows that are small. Okay. Use cases are where you can stick a screen flow. So, for example, I've done this one a few times. Somebody wants some urgent notes that then will show at the top. A field that's got your note in when that note has something in it. The screen flow makes sure it's shown right at the top of the page. And within there, we've also used the Salesforce error red hex code hash FF0000, which I thought was really cool. I just played with a fun one for the Irish streaming team, but yeah, you can put something far more sensible in there. But I've actually got a couple of clients who love this, and they love the fact that it's very simple for somebody to just be able to go and update that notes field. It might be, do not contact, or this is a trustee, or whatever it is. We then got this. Now, this is what I'm calling the 3-column problem. Does anybody have a 3-column problem where what they really want to see is an outcome where they've got, before, after, change. And instead of being able to do before, after, change, they have to like bring it down on the next level. And then people look at it and they're like, I don't get it. So the way we can solve that is use a screen flow. You can now get them nicely lined up in a row. And actually right at the bottom here, I've also shown what's a 4-column problem. Not needed to solve for that yet. It's a very bad example on screen, but you can see how you can use a screen flow just to manipulate that data so it just looks more how your users would want it to seem, right? Like they're not going to want this. Not really. Move on to item 6. This is dynamic forms. I'm going to say they're a replacement, in quotes, for page layouts. They are available on all custom objects and most standard objects, not campaign, tasks, products. There's a few others, I believe. You could just put the record detail page on the Lightning page with some of the other components. What you do need to be careful of is that if you've dynamic formed any aspect to your page and then you think, oh, do you know what? I'm going to have a tab that just shows the particular page layout for majors because I'm not going to bother moving that to dynamic forms. When you go to create a record, it'll be blank. Just a warning. You only have to have done it once and then you will remember. So if you're going to try and, you can't mix and match that page layout versus dynamic forms. I thought you could. You can't. I tried it. So dynamic forms, what can we do with them? We can do things like field visibility, section visibility. We can add a field more than once. Maybe this, what's their favorite color is really, really important. Just remember though, that then when you edit it, that field will be there twice. So you just need to think about how that works. Some people find that I had a fellow consultant think that was really weird. Equally, I was like, if it's really important, you might not be bothered it shows up twice. You can add a field from a lookup record, so you don't need to create a formula. So that is also super helpful. So for example, here, I've brought in the website field off the account. Yes, I just want to show that. Remember though, you still may need formulas for things like email templates in many instances, but definitely helpful, especially if people just want to check that piece of data between the records. Let's move on now to optimized list views. These are just list views, but it's kind of how we think about them. So my fellow MVP friend, Jodie Miners, she calls them actionable lists. So she really loves setting up list views for people and saying, these are things that you are actioning. And the name of the game is to have no records on them. And she might have, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, whatever the business case is of actionable lists. Save them in the favorites. That's the little star at the top, totally underutilized. And then somebody in the morning comes in and they go, okay, I'm going to go to actionable list one, do my work, and so on. So just some examples, we've got things like opportunities that are overdue, so the close dates in the past, maybe donors to acknowledge. So email acknowledgement is not yet sent, or maybe cases of concern, if they've been open too long, priorities of a certain level, and so on. Note the flag being in the list view. Remember that flag? Yep, you can put it in there and you can sort by it. So for those that really love a flag or an emoji or whatever you want to put in, um, they can go in there. But yeah, really like the idea of this. Do not feel that this is used anywhere near enough. Other things that we can do in these list views, inline editing. Just remember your field needs to be on the page layout. There are some other requirements and limitations. They are in my help document. But this is great. I can go in and I can be like, do you know what? Blue Dynamics opportunity one, it's no longer at a prospecting stage. I know it's been qualified. I'm just going to change it right here. Or going to go and correct people's names where they've nicely created, put their donation in. We're very grateful for their donation. Thank you. However, Hannah has a capital, huh, I think. So, love how people spell things. But if you want to do some tidying up nice and quick in your list views, there's also enhanced list views. Now, this appears to be enabled in some orgs and not in others. So if it's not enabled, you can go into Setup, User Interface, Enable Enhanced List Views, and this will allow you to sort multiple columns. So for example, I did account name for the first one, stage for the second one, and you can go on. I think there's 5 column limit. I would love to know what use cases people come up with for this, because I'm sure people who are down in the data will have some really good use cases for this. But yeah, really a great piece of functionality to show to your users, to say to them, hey, do you know you can do this? And this is a great way for you to sort those actionable lists that I'm going to create for you. A great idea. Now let's talk about number 8, theme and branding. Whose Salesforce login screen looks like this? But honestly, people, yeah, I see some people being like, yeah, me. Yeah, there's also people I can't see. Okay, so wouldn't it look better if it looked like, oh, and then what about their pages when they log in? They look a bit like this. Yeah, yeah, a bit just Salesforcey. What if it looked like that? This is a real example from one of my clients, and RDA were happy for me to share it. This is such a small piece of work to do. Now, please do it in Sandbox first. Don't just do it in production. But this is so easy to do. You're literally pulling the page on the right is a URL. That's their website. And this is a color and a logo. Done. You have got your own thing. It's no longer Salesforce. It's now your organization's Salesforce. And then when you log in, I mean, this is also SLDS2, which we'll talk about in a minute, but we've got a logo at the top, we've got some colors going on. At the line can auto that's here, tiny little line. There are other things you can do as well. Debbie from PSPA is on here. Debbie's orgs are all beautifully branded and colored, and they look fantastic. So, you can really go to town with this. I mean, don't totally overdo it, but it just looks far more like yours, right? There's no longer that Sales Cloud logo sat up in the top corner. Yeah, you can make it look so much better. So, as I said, very easy to do. You can customize the login page from set up my domain, customize, you can do that in there, sorry. That's where you change your background color and your right frame URL and so on. And then set up user interface, themes and branding is where you can change the other piece. So, definitely take a look at that, have a look in a sandbox and see what it does. And I'm going to say surprise and delight your users, or tell them it's coming if you feel that they are more that way needed. But, you could just tell them something exciting is coming. Let's carry on to subtle in-page guidance. So this is not in-page guidance like that big, in-pagey app guidance-y thing, which looks great, but also is quite complicated. This is more simple stuff. So things like making sure that we've got help text, embedding rich text on a lightning record page, So things like I've got here, close date should reflect the customer's decision date, not our internal target date. Now we could put that in help text, but also if you've got a real problem in your org where your close dates are all wonky, you might want to shout that out a bit more, and really kind of make that clear to people. I've also done things. Oh, one of my favorites actually is on a homepage, two things. One, somebody wrote a really nice thing that just welcomed people to Salesforce. Hey, this is Salesforce at this organization. You can find da 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 in here. And I was like, wow, that's simple but effective. You can also do things like hyperlinks, hyperlink out to SharePoint for documentation, or hyperlink out to SharePoint for maybe, let's be honest, we all still have spreadsheets that loiter around. Maybe we want to link to that specific document that goes with it. That's an option too. And then we've got validation rules, and validation rules that educate, not just that say this is wrong. So, for example, this is based on the type being partner. Partner accounts get the VIP treatment. Help us out with a billing address, phone, and website. And if you're really struggling with like, how do I write those? Like, think about maybe speaking to some AI and saying, hey, these are the fields I require. This is why. Please write me a nice educational validation rule, see what it does. Also, guidance for success in path. Love a path. And you can base these on any pick list fields. You can put some key fields in on the left and on the right. You can put some guidance for success in. So things like in here, we've got a URL to a doc. Maybe you've got an offline doc about this one says what negotiation coaching. It does cap out. It counts the characters in the HTML, I believe, because things like bullets use HTML, but it's pretty sizable, and can be really helpful. Equally, they can shrink it. So above key fields, this little arrow, they can shrink it. So if you've got people who are like, oh no, because I've done this for years, I wouldn't need it. That's okay. They can just collapse it down. They won't see it, but anybody new will. Let's talk about SLDS2. This is where I'm going to sound like I swallowed some sort of Salesforce marketing tool. It is a new design for Salesforce. It is a path to the future. Basically, it's bringing new architecture, which expands our brand and theming options. It sets the foundation for the agentic experience. And it has dark mode, which is cool. The main thing is for me, it's a new design. And it looks kind of like this. So it kind of rounds things off, rounds off the pills. This is just pulled from the theming and branding. So you've got, your little help texts are in green and so on. It just looks and feels slicker. This org in particular was struggling with user adoption and doing, and it was literally like an hour and a half's work to just, if that, to go, here's some theming and branding, and here's SLDS2. Now, what I will say, caution, if you have a lot of custom stuff, if you've got Lightning Web Components and Visualforce pages, don't just turn this on. But if you're using pretty vanilla, out of the box, MPSP, I would have thought nonprofit cloud, all of that, sorry, Agentforce nonprofits, turn it on in a sandbox, take a look, see what you think. But I think it looks great. And then finally, you can enable dark mode. So that is in setup, user interface, themes, and branding. It is in beta, so it could go away, but let's hope it doesn't. And this allows your users to enable it. It doesn't go dark for everybody. Looks like this. Normally I get a ooh. And in here, the user in their little Cody head or their picture can go and choose whether they want to be in light or in dark mode. So you're not doing it for the whole org. You can give people the option. As I say, it is in beta, but it does look pretty good. It's been really asked for numerous times at True to the Core, and they finally delivered on it. So yeah, it's dark mode for you. So as discussed, there is a resource link. So that resource link has a link to a document which has got lots of supplementary documents in it. So I will let you pick up on that resource link, and I will make a note to also go and find it and post it, unless anybody has opened it and fancies posting it for me, because that would be great too. I will just have a quick look in chat if I can, though that appears to be hard to do. Okay. Guidance for success. Oh, thank you, Debbie, for posting that link. No, guidance for success doesn't always open. It should remember your preference. So if it's not, I would also be tempted to report it. So if you know you left it open and the next time you log in, it's gone, I'd be tempted to just open a case, because if Salesforce don't know, can't fix it. And things like that can get broken between releases. Okay, well, that was enough of me waffling, I'm sure. I'm just gonna stop sharing. I hope that people found that informative. Does anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts? Oh, Tamsin.
Hey, thanks, Emma. That was awesome. Is there somewhere you can point me towards to learn about those, like what I need to know for that to apply those screen flows?
Um,
Like in like the three-column idea, I love it. But my being right at the beginning of my journey, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure how I would actually do that in a screen flow. Is that me just being and looking on Trailhead and finding and upskilling myself a bit more?
I would say yes, but equally, mm, might be worth a Google to just see if anybody's done it in a video. Quite often you'll find that people have written YouTube videos where they'll just take you through it. The other thing is,
Okay,
keep it
cool.
in mind. We could always maybe put it into a session somewhere. I'm sure we can get somebody to go through how it's done.
That would
Yeah,
be amazing. Okay, I'll have a Google. If not, I'll vote for that.
yep, sounds great. Okay. Anybody else got any questions? Amazing. Fantastic. Well, in that case, then I'm going to hand over to Craig. Let Craig pick up on accessibility.
Alrighty, thank you.
Amazing.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Craig Warren. I am a Salesforce consultant and accessibility specialist. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 6 years, and I'm here today to tell you all about accessibility. I'm personally completely blind. I'm also hard of hearing, so I leverage my own lived experience um, to be able to share that with you all. So. Let's just start with a definition. So, accessibility is the practice of making information, products, services, and environments usable and meaningful for as many people as possible, regardless of their abilities or disabilities. So, one question I get a lot of times is, how do I actually go about doing my work as a Salesforce consultant? So, um, I use something called a screen reader, and so it's a piece of software that is essentially speaking all of the information on the screen out loud using a synthetic voice like that sounds kind of like Siri or your Amazon A lady whose name I won't say in case I trigger it. So I'm also using what's called a Braille display. So it's something that is translating all the text and information on the screen into Braille that I can actually read with my fingers as I am talking with you right now. Um, so I'd like to try and do a pretty brief demo just so you can get a sense of what a screen reader sounds like. You may have to bear with me for just a moment as um do I have the ability to share?
Hold on, that could be me who has not done that. That is not helpful.
Okay,
Hold on. There you go, Craig. You do now.
thank you. There we go. Now I just need to be able to share this sound. Okay, so I'm going to share and just read a basic web page with a screen reader. Um, just a little bit of warning, I can't always control how loud this is, so it might be you might need to adjust your volume. Um, so here I am in a Salesforce org.
Speech mode talk.
And I've slowed this down considerably so that hopefully you can kind of understand what it's saying.
Link skip to main content. Salesforce enforces new security requirements in June 2026. Link see what's changing.
Okay, so it's reading a lovely little message.
Blink close. Button collapsed toggle panel. Sandbox left pair menu button collapsed sub button search. Global header nav button clickable fit clickable menu button collapsed button opens dialog clickable menu button sub menu clickable menu button collapsed sub menu setup button opens dialog clickable notifications. Menu button submenu clickable view profile out of list blank clickable app navigation landmark button collapsed opens dialog app launcher heading level 1 program management clickable global navigation landmark list with 6 items press space bar to reorder navigation items visited linked home visited link service deliveries menu button visited link service menu button visited linked current page star visited linked current page all cases bar cases menu button collapsed submenu all cases bar cases list button closed tab menu button collapsed submenu show more navigate clickable button edit nav items out of list main landmark cases copy of all open cases select a list view cases pin this list view printable view assign label copy of all open cases update this list view control speak.
All right, so that's kind of an idea of what it sounds like. You may have noticed that there's quite a bit of information that it's reading. It's not just reading all the text, but it's giving me a lot of information. Like, okay, on my page there, I'm on a app called Program Management. All of these things across that we're used to across the top, like home and service deliveries. These are all links, and then you have um, each one of these things next to that is like a drop down menu. And so I think one of the things that it takes a little while for somebody to get used to is just all of the amount of information um, that you hear when you're a screen reader user. Um, let's see, continuing on, I should just remember to sharing. Where was I? So web accessibility is all about making websites and apps usable for all of us. Um, there, there's a survey that's done every year, and it finds that approximately 95% of websites are not designed with accessibility in mind. So that is a big opportunity for all of us to maybe stand out by making our websites and our apps accessible. Um, Now I want to just mention the way that we know that our websites are accessible. Websites get evaluated against something called the WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Um, and so when we are using Salesforce, Salesforce has been evaluated against all of those different criteria, and um, they've made a lot of changes over the years to make sure that they are actually compliant with that. So basically within that WCAG framework, there are four main principles that are called perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And those principles are broken down into 86 different criteria that are used to evaluate any website. Um, Now, while I think it's nice to have some idea of what the WCAG is, and what some of those criteria are. It's a bit more than I have time to go into in a 30-minute talk. So I'm just going to encourage everybody to learn more at the W3C website, which stands for the World Wide Web Consortium. Um, so I'm glad that you're all here, interested in learning about accessibility, but some people maybe they don't know why accessibility is important. So a couple of reasons. One is that inclusive design benefits everyone, whether they have a disability or not. So, for example, the typewriter and the telephone were inventions that were originally made um, for someone who had a disability. But now that those exist, like, we all get to benefit. Um, and so um, there are many other examples. You may not be aware, but most business and nonprofits are required to follow the WCAG guidelines. In the US, we have the ADA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act, and in Europe there is an EU Accessibility Act. So while I think accessibility, we should do it um, because it's the right thing to do, and because it's helpful for our users. Some people, the the legal and financial requirements are what are motivating for them. So um, that is what I will say about that. Um, so there are a lot of different areas that we can think about when we think about making something accessible, um, whether it's content on a website, it's emails that we send out, whether it's training documents, And so before I talk a bit more about Salesforce, I wanted to just start by talking about how I would talk about working with text. So a few tips as far as that. One important thing is having a good color contrast. So that means like having contrast between your foreground and your background. The WCAG recommends a ratio of 4.5 to 1. I am not I'm not an expert on colors, and I think it could be hard to tell whether something is necessarily accessible. So I always recommend using the WebAIM contrast checker, and or there are many other contrast checker websites that you can find online. Some general rules of thumb, I recommend choosing one or two fonts and making sure that they're easy to read rather than using a million different fonts on one page of text. If you're including any images in your content, you'll want to have something called alt text or alternative text. And so this is a little description of the content that is read to the person who is using the screen reader or to somebody who can't see the image. It's also helpful if you're like on a mobile phone, you have a bad connection and the image doesn't load, then there'll be a little bit, then that alt text description might show up for the user. Um, if you have any audio or video, having captions or transcripts for your content is really helpful so that everybody um, can can participate whether they're able to hear or see it or not. Um, okay, so next I wanted to talk a little bit about building forms. So I'm going to pull up an example of a very simple form. And this form looks like it is accessible just when you look at it visually. Um, can everybody see this okay?
We can see a little form at the bottom that's got full name, biography, and then gender, kind of like checky box. And at the top, we can see the CSS code that's related to that, the HTML and the CSS.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
So this is just a simple form with a couple of fields. Um,
Speech mode talk.
when I am when I go to use this form with a screen reader, um, the problem that I have here, there's essentially three problems that I have here. The label or the field or the name of the field isn't properly it isn't coded properly. So when I tab through the fields in this form, the screen reader is not going to tell me what each of these fields actually does. So
Edit blank. One password menu is of
when I tabbed into this one, it just says edit field blank.
edit multi-line blank.
And then I tabbed again, and here it just says edit multi-line field blank. So if I would want to figure out what these fields are, I have to get out of these edit boxes. I have to arrow around and hope that the text
Nihagupta
for the field that identifies it is nearby. So
out of edit biography.
So I'm in this case, I'm able to arrow over and see that this field is called biography. But without having like a clear understanding or having those field labels properly linked to the field, um, it might be that the biography is actually referring to the field above it. So somebody who's using a screen reader,
full name edit.
they might go to this full name field and say, "Oh, that's the biography field. Let me put my biography in there." And so it just leads to a very confusing experience.
Edit black.
So the final issue um, that this form has is that you have the submit button. Visually, it looks like a button, but it's actually a link. And while that doesn't sound like a huge deal, like, hey, I can still go and I can hit submit. A lot of times as a screen reader user, what we like to do is essentially the screen reader gives us different shortcuts. Like, okay, I'm in the middle of this form and I think I've filled out everything and I want to jump to the end, so I'm just gonna hit B for button to go try and find my submit button.
Clickable refresh add button.
And I went and I looked for my submit button, but then it wasn't a button, so that now I'm somewhere completely else. So
Frame edit.
Essentially,
Radio button.
um,
Generally bad. Refresh add button. Off. Radio button not checked.
and what you're seeing in this form is that I'm trying to tap over to that submit button, and it's actually just skipping it.
Radio, link submit. Generally bad form. Radio button.
One other problem on this form I didn't think of until just now is that there's no way to tell, like, okay, I hit submit. Ideally you would have like a success message or a new screen that would load up. But in this case, it's just kind of an example form. So basically it's loading when you hit submit, but nothing, as far as the screen reader's perspective, like nothing's actually changing on the page. So if that happens, then there's like it's not really clear to me as the user whether I was actually like successful in submitting or saving. So fortunately for all of us, if we're building like a dynamic form or a screen flow, Salesforce handles a lot of these kind of behind the scenes for us. And so we're kind of fortunate in that regard.
7.
Let's see, let me stop sharing. Okay, so some other tips are, like I mentioned, having the field labels always be visible on the page is important. Sometimes there'll be situations where you'll where I'll find a field that doesn't have a label, but it has placeholder text. So maybe it's like an email field and your placeholder text is you@example.com. And so the problem with that is like once you start typing into the field, then the placeholder text will just disappear. And then now if I navigate away from that and come back to it, there's no label, so I don't know what the field actually does. A lot of this is it's really important to make sure that you do some sort of testing. So whether that means enlisting the help of somebody who is a screen reader user or a magnification user or other type of assistive technology. Another thing that I encourage is try to just use your forms or your web pages without using your mouse. So like see if you can just navigate your form by like just using your tab key and your arrow keys. Um, and then you can see kind of like what your tab order is like and like how many you know how like how many times it takes you to um how many actions you need to take to like complete a task. Another common problem I see a lot of times is with date fields. Um, there, there, there used to be a form when you were signing up for your certification exams. There used to be a form that you had to sign up and you had to pick your date, and I would have to email Salesforce support and say, I can't use this form because it forced you to click on a date on the calendar rather than being able to type in your date. And so like I couldn't complete that form just because of that one single field. And so um what I like to do in Salesforce is just make use of my help text and say you can either click the date on the calendar or you can type in your date in month, day, year format, or whatever your format is. And I just find like having some little bits of like instructions can be really helpful. Um, and then just making sure that your tab order of your fields is logical. So like if you're filling out a form that's like first name, last name, making sure that your last name comes after the first name and things like that. Um, Another example of a form that you might deal with a lot is a registration form. So let's say like you're holding an event or a fundraiser. But usually there's a lot of information that you need to collect for that. So it's helpful to like make sure that things are organized into logical sections. If you have a bunch of different sections of fields on a page, it's really helpful to include headings. So within your dynamic forms, for example, like Salesforce is putting in headings for you automatically. And me as the screen reader user, I can use a shortcut to jump through from heading to heading, and so that helps me to be able to jump from one section to the next. Um, Pick the fields that you're going to make required carefully. So one example I have is like requiring a phone field on a form. I have a friend who is deaf and she prefers mostly to use email or texting to communicate. And so she may not want to give out like a phone number because people kind of make the assumption that they can give her a phone call and talk with her. And also there are some people who are not able to speak. And so in that case, maybe um, having the phone number might actually be required, might actually be somewhat of a barrier for folks. And so, um, in that sort of situation, then you might want to make like might want to make the phone or the email requirement, or some other sort of criteria like that. And then offer multiple ways to register so that it's easy for everyone. So some people may love the online form experience, but other people might um, prefer to use an offline method like telephone or a text message or an email. Um, and then for an event, like including a description and a schedule can be really helpful. Um, so talking about now, I want to talk a bit about how you can make Salesforce a bit more accessible for somebody with a screen reader. Um, a lot of what Emma has already shared with you today is really applicable. Um, and a lot of it, a lot of what I've learned is by experimentation and just by trying out things and seeing what worked well. Um, but overall, I think the overall theme is keep it simple. Um, so one example I wanted to give is with list views. So um, when you're navigating through a list view, so it's important, I think, just to imagine what the screen reader person's like, or what the person's experience might be like. And then also think about like how are they going to be using this thing? Um, so like I have an example here. Let's see, let me share my screen again.
Mute. Cosmic. Task. All cases bar cases. Alt participant. Visited link service.
All right, so I'm in Salesforce. I'm gonna jump by heading to get into my list view.
Main landmark cases heading level.
Okay, so it says cases,
Clickable cases all cases heading level 1.
and it says cases, all cases. That's the name of my list view.
Form filters heading level 2.
Then I have filters.
No next head.
Okay, so then the actual list view itself is a table. So I'm gonna hit T for table.
Clickable table clickable with 18 rows and 9 columns, row 1 column 1.
Okay, it tells me there are 18 rows and 9 columns. So keeping it simple, I would recommend the fewer columns that you have is the better, because for me, like I'm gonna need to do a keystroke to navigate through each column. So if I want to get over to that ninth column, I'm gonna have to do my Control Alt arrow keystroke that moves by column. Um, I'm gonna have to do that like 8 or 9 times.
Craig,
Um,
can I
uh-huh.
can I interject to give you a time a time notification to say that you've probably got just shy of 5 minutes left.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Column 2 clickable. Column 3 sorted ascending clickable.
Okay, so what I wanted to highlight here is that what you have in your very leftmost column is important because as I navigate down each row, um, the screen reader is going to identify what's in that column using that very leftmost column. So in this case, I have a case number, and so what you'll hear is every time I navigate down, it's going to read out that whole case number.
Row to link 00001011.
And then even if I'm in a different column, it's going to read that
Sort
out.
by code. 00001012 row 3 clickable link track grant funds distributed remaining amount per
And so in this case, I would recommend switching up the columns to have something like the subject be in that first column. So as I'm navigating down through this, I can just hear something that helps me identify like what thing I'm looking for most quickly. And then I'd recommend having my second or third columns be um, whatever types of information that I'm looking for. So like maybe I want to look through this table of cases through this list view and see which ones are closed. So like having those couple of columns like close together, so I don't have to do a bunch of like horizontal moving back and forth is really helpful. So just a little bit of thought into like how you lay something out can go a long way. Um, when it comes to record pages, having sometimes I recommend having a screen reader version that lays out everything on a single screen can be helpful. So um, having having a page with a bunch of tabs is not always the most intuitive experience for a screen reader user, and they might not even notice that the different tab options are there if they're not like a really experienced screen reader user. So in that kind of situation, it's often helpful to just kind of talk to your users, give them a couple of tips on like how to find things and ask questions and figure out what's kind of intuitive for them. Having like the having collapsible sections like using the dynamic forms can be really helpful because you could just hide a lot of the things that you don't need. And then Emma already mentioned dark mode with SLDS2, which is really great. There's also a couple of new release updates for visually impaired users, and so I'd recommend checking those out and enabling those as it infects it as it sorry as it affects like how the user interface looks for somebody who's using screen magnification. So that is most of what I wanted to share today. So thank you all very much for being here and for listening. And I'll turn it back over to you, Emma.
Sorry, I'm here. Just couldn't find the button. Thank you so much, Craig. That was great. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask before we jump into some duck racing?
So many questions. I'm going to just throw myself in here. Can I ask a quick question about screen flows and about how screen flow components on pages Are they easy to interact with, or are they a nightmare?
They're generally easy to interact with, but I would say it depends on, sometimes it depends on the type of component that you're using, especially like maybe if you're using like I don't know, like say you install some sort of third-party component, um it won't necessarily like follow the SLDS or it might do something custom. So I'd say it depends. Um, as far as like having something on the record page, it can be helpful to just turn on the header so that the section gets like a title.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much, Craig. I think we've all got lots to think about. We'll let you know if we have any questions.
Thank you. Yeah. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I am I am always happy to answer questions um if I have an answer.